Hey, everybody, it's Patrick
And I'm Greg.
with the next in our series of Advent Calendar Reveals featuring retro computers that we've all used.
All right, excellent. What do we have today, Patrick?
Okay, today, Greg, we have one of my fan favorites, obviously. It's the Apple Macintosh, which was released in 1984. Um, and in fact, we have it. The advertisement and the release of it was one of the most significant, and I believe it's considered to be one of the 10 best ads ever made, and it only ran twice. So we could talk a little bit more about that. I've collected that ad and a few others. Won't we give
Let's
them
roll that footage.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of vain contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people. One will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. Introducing Macintosh. It does all the things you'd expect a business computer to do. It does a lot of things you wouldn't expect a business computer to do. And it does some things no other business computer has ever done before. Of course, to do all this, you will have to learn to do this. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us.
The development of Macintosh by Apple has been paralleled by the work of leading software developers.
It's a great machine. It's a step forward in terms of the way it uses graphics and the speed. And this is a machine that a lot of people are going to be able to afford. That's a very, very useful machine. I was enthused. Microsoft doesn't work with new hardware very often, but we put a team of people on it from the beginning, and we're planning that over half of our retail sales next year will come from Macintosh software.
At the back of Macintosh, you'll find two built-in ports for connecting a printer, a modem, or to Apple Bus, Apple's own local area network, as well as a dedicated port for an external disk drive. The Image Writer printer from Apple is specially designed for Macintosh. By plugging a modem into your Macintosh, you can communicate by telephone with electronic databases and news services. You can also emulate DEC VT100 and IBM 3278 terminals. You can expand the storage capacity of your Macintosh with an external disk drive, just like the one we built in. And if you work with lots of numbers, you'll appreciate the optional numeric keypad. And when you're ready to travel, Macintosh can easily go along. The durable carrying case is strong and waterproof. Your Macintosh, keyboard, mouse, manuals, and software all fit neatly inside. Even fully loaded, the carrying case is light enough to go anywhere you go.
The real genius of Macintosh, the world's newest personal computer, isn't its 32-bit microprocessor or its Lisa technology, or that it captures the power of a mainframe on a board 10 by 10 inches, or even that it costs half as much as computers half as powerful. The real genius of Macintosh is that you don't have to be a genius to use it. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us.
Before we talk about the Macintosh, I thought we should talk a little bit about the first ad, the George Orwell styled 1984 ad. It
Yes.
was, I believe it was conceived of, written, and done in like 7 to 10 days. And in fact, it was one of the most expensive ads ever made. They got Ridley Scott, who we'd have to check what he had made by then. He might have done Aliens and some of his other. He was a very well-known director at the time, and the theme of this fit him. I mentioned earlier the ad was only run twice. Most people only know it to have run once at the Super Bowl in 1984. Apple had purchased 2 Super Bowl slots. They were going to run it once in the first half, once in the second half. But the board of directors of Apple got to see the ad and they wanted it pulled. They didn't want to run it. They thought it was too creepy or what have you. And the story goes that Jobs and the ad partner lied to the board and said, okay, we can probably kill the second one, but we've already paid for the spot and we can't get out of that. And at the time, it was millions of dollars. And that would have been a real loss. So they said, okay, go ahead, let the ad run. And so the ad was run at that Super Bowl. It was also run one other time in some nowhere small station at 1 o'clock in the morning in November of that year. And the whole reason they did that was so they could get the ad qualified for there's awards for advertisements, and they wanted it in the running for that year. And I think, yes, they did win. So the other ads are more traditional. One of the things you see about this, and I think this compares to a lot of the other ads we've seen so far, there's a whole lot more effort and style put into their ads than you see with other companies. And if you notice, they really don't talk about specs. They mentioned, I think it was a 32-bit computer. That was the one thing in one of those ads. But for the most part, they're selling a feeling of a personal computer. And
right, they were really pushing that mouse.
Yeah, and they're really highly stylized ads and done well. Obviously, people are doing more of that today, but that was something about that. What can you tell us about what it sold for? And
Well, 2,495, so literally a quarter the cost of the Lisa, and probably arguably just as powerful, if not better, which is $7,300 in today's money. The first iteration was the 128. That would be the price for a 128. They started this in January of 24. They discontinued it in October of 85 because then everything coming off the line became the 512 models.
correct.
It had the Motorola 68,000, 128K of RAM to start with, and of course, as you can see, the 3.5 floppy built right in. 9-inch monochrome, and 16.5 pounds.
I'm not sure. I remember when this came out, the college was buying a whole bunch of Apple IIes to make a lab. And this had just hit, and we could grab one at our state contract price. If I'm not mistaken, you could order it with more memory, but you had to. It was soldered on, so you had to order it then, and the more memory was a lot more expensive. And in fact, the reason it only had 128K, they knew this machine was not as great with that amount of memory. It was always using the disk drive constantly. But Steve Jobs wanted the price point to be $24.95, and what he wanted to do was get it out at that price and wait for memory prices to start dropping, which is what happened.
Okay, sure.
And pretty soon after, you talked about the 512K became more the standard. That was the minimum you would buy. Then they came out with the Mac Plus, which had 1 mega memory in it.
Makes sense.
and it's kept growing ever since then. How did
Well,
it
it
sell?
certainly was a nice design. They look neat, compact. You can pick it up, carry it around. Like I said, 16 and a half pounds. It's not too bad to carry around.
No, and most of what's in that case is the monitor. As I think one of the ads mentioned, the motherboard is it sits on the bottom where the keyboard's plugging into it, and that was the guts of the machine. I think on one side was the video, the thing that controlled the picture tube. Basically, the electronics of the TV was on the side.
Yeah, the video board still was upright on the
Right.
left side as you're looking at that screen now.
Yeah, and then you had a power supply. Um, the only other thing I thought interesting, they mentioned something called the Apple Bus, which is basically those two ports on the back. It later got called Local Talk, and we have a whole series talking about Local Talk, which is how they were going to connect machines together, share printers, what have you. This was, again, Jobs' first time. He didn't think people needed slots anymore. He didn't want to build a computer that had expansion. He thought everything you would need, you could plug into one of those two ports. It was his shot at, you might say, USB, that the ports would become the expansion. It never really took off as much as he thought. There were things, but there weren't as.
Yeah, I have no actual sales numbers either, so I don't know how many of these were made out there.
The Mac sold some, obviously. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people just bought it out of curiosity. It wasn't until you mentioned the memory upgrade came along that it really started to move. And as you said, it came out in the same year, which made a difference. But it gave them the time to talk about it while they were waiting for that next model. Rev B.
Gotcha.
Hope you like this latest reveal on our advent calendar of retro computers. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up.
And if you want to keep watching, hit that subscribe button. And if you hit the bell, you'll get notified every time we have a new episode.
And if you haven't watched all of the videos in this series, there should be a link on your screen so you can go to our advent calendar playlist and see past episodes.